Hey folks, tonight we're diving into something a little less profound and a whole lot more mouth-watering medieval street food. That's right, long before there were drive-thrus or corner stores, people still craved salty snacks and sweet indulgences. Some of it was surprisingly tasty, some of it might haunt your dreams, but all of it gives us a raw, crunchy bite of the past. So before we dig in, hit that like button and subscribe. Only if you truly enjoy these tasty time travel trips. And drop a comment with your location and what time it is for you. I always love knowing where you all are watching from. Single breath of winter air slipped through the cracks in the timber, curling like a ghost around the sleeping forms huddled on the dirt floor. The world outside is silent, smothered beneath a heavy quilt of snow, the sky a pale bruise above the thatched rooftops. Inside, the darkness is thick and close, broken only by the faintest glow of dying embers, their warmth a memory more than a promise. The scent of cold earth and old straw fills the lungs, mingling with the sour tang of hunger that never quite leaves. A mother sits awake in the gloom, her back pressed against the rough wall, her arms wrapped around her children. Their bodies are small, fragile, curled like seeds beneath a threadbare blanket. She listens to their breathing, the slow, uneven rhythm of sleep interrupted by the soft whimper of a dream or the sharp, involuntary gasp of a belly that has forgotten fullness. Her own stomach aches, a dull, gnawing pain that has become as familiar as her own heartbeat. She remembers the taste of bread, the sweetness of honey, the comfort of a full pot simmering on the hearth. Now there's only the memory, and the hope that tomorrow will bring something more. The bread bin stands open on the table, empty but for a dusting of flour. A single turnip, shriveled and bruised, sits beside it, waiting for the morning. The mother's hands, red and cracked from the cold, reach for it, turning it over as if it might reveal some hidden bounty. She breaks it into thin slices, careful not to waste a single piece, her movements slow and deliberate. Each slice is a prayer, a promise to her children that she will do whatever it takes to see them through another night. Outside, the wind howls against the walls, rattling the door on its leather hinges. The sound is both a warning and a lullaby, a reminder that the world beyond these walls is vast and indifferent. The snow piles higher against the threshold, sealing them in, turning the cottage into a tomb of silence and waiting. Somewhere in the distance, a crow calls, its voice sharp and lonely, echoing across the frozen fields. The children stir in their sleep, their faces pale and hollow, their lips tinged with blue. The youngest whimpers, reaching for the warmth of his mother's body. She pulls him close, pressing her lips to his forehead, whispering words of comfort that are more hope than truth. Sleep, my love, morning will come. But the night stretches on, endless and unyielding, each hour marked by the slow drift of ash in the hearth, and the tightening knot of hunger in her belly. A wooden crucifix hangs above the hearth, its shadow long and wavering in the weak light. The mother's gaze lingers on it, her lips moving in silent prayer. She does not ask for abundance, only for endurance. For the strength to see her children through the winter, for the courage to face another day of want. The faith that once felt like a warm cloak now feels thin and tattered, but she clings to it all the same, her fingers tracing the shape of the cross in the air. The world outside is a study in white and gray, the trees bowed beneath their burden, the sky heavy with the promise of more snow. The village is silent, each home a small island of suffering, each family bound together by the common thread of hunger. The fields lie fallow beneath their icy shroud, the promise of spring a distant dream. The well stands frozen, its bucket rimmed with ice, a silent monument to the season's cruelty. Inside, the mother waits for dawn, her eyes fixed on the window, watching for the first hint of light. She thinks of her husband, gone before the sun, searching for work, for food, for anything that might ease their suffering. She wonders if he will return, if he will bring news of hope or only more hunger. The hours pass slowly, marked by the vive, shifting shadows on the wall and the soft, rhythmic breathing of her children. As the first pale light of morning creeps across the floor, the mother rises, her movements stiff and slow. She wraps her children in the blanket, tucking them close, and moves to the hearth. She stirs the ashes, coaxing a small flame from the embers, her hand steady despite the cold. The turnip is sliced thin, dropped into a pot of water, the thin broth a meager offering, but all she has to give. The children wake, their eyes wide and searching, their faces brightening at the promise of warmth. They gather around the hearth, their bodies pressed close, their hunger momentarily forgotten in the comfort of each other's presence. The mother ladles out the broth, her hands trembling, her heart heavy with both gratitude and guilt. She watches as her children eat, their faces alight with hope, and feels a flicker of something like joy. But the hunger remains, a shadow that lingers at the edge of every moment, a reminder of all that has been lost. The mother knows that the winter is far from over, that the days ahead will be long and hard. But for now, she allows herself to hope, to believe that they will survive, that spring will come, that the world will one day be green again. As the sun rises, casting a pale gold light across the snow, the mother stands at the window, her breath fogging the glass. She watches the world awaken, the village stirring to life, each home a small beacon of endurance in the vast and different winter. She closes her eyes, whispering a prayer for strength, for mercy, for another day. And as the day begins, the hunger recedes, if only for a moment, replaced by the quiet, stubborn hope that has carried her this far. The story of survival is written in the lines of her face, in the strength of her hands, in the love that binds her family together. The night has passed, but the struggle continues, each day a new chapter in the long, unending winter. In the distance, a bell tolls, its sound rolling across the fields like a promise. The mother turns from the window, gathering her children close, ready to face whatever the day may bring. The world is still cold, still hungry, but within these walls, hope endures, a fragile flame against the darkness, a testament to the power of love and the will to survive. And so, as the village stirs and the sun climbs higher, the story moves forward, deeper into the heart of winter, where every breath is a victory, and every dawn a new beginning. A scream of wind tears across the frozen fields, rattling the shutters and setting the old signpost creaking at the edge of the village. The night is a living thing, cold, hungry, and relentless. Beneath the pale gaze of the moon, a solitary figure moves through the snow, his cloak trailing behind him like a shadow. Each step is a negotiation with the earth, boots crunching through the crust of ice, breath rising in ragged clouds that vanish into the darkness. He is a father, a husband, a man hollowed by hunger and hope. His hands, once strong and sure, are now cracked and raw, the skin split and bleeding from days spent foraging in the frozen woods. The sack he carries is nearly empty, its weight a cruel reminder of all that has been lost. He remembers the taste of barley porridge, the comfort of a full belly, the laughter of his children around the hearth. Now the world is reduced to the ache in his bones and the gnawing emptiness in his gut. He passes the shuttered homes of neighbors, each window a flicker of candlelight, each door barred against the cold. Inside, families huddle together, sharing what little warmth and food remains. The village is bound by a silent pact. No one speaks of hunger, but all feel its grip. The well in the center of the square stands frozen, its bucket rimmed with ice, a monument to the season's cruelty. The church bell, muffled by the wind, tolls the hour, its sound rolling across the snow like a prayer for mercy. The man's thoughts drift to his wife, waiting in the darkness with their children. He can see her face in his mind, pale, drawn, eyes rimmed with worry. He knows she will not sleep until he returns, will not rest until she sees what he brings. He feels the weight of their hope pressing down on him, heavier than the sack slung over his shoulder. He moves past the edge of the village, into the woods where the trees stand like silent sentinels, their branches heavy with snow. The world here is hushed, the only sound the crunch of his boots and the distant howl of a wolf. He kneels in the snow, fingers numb as he digs for roots, searching for anything that might stave off the hunger for another day. The earth is hard, unyielding, but he does not stop. He cannot stop. Each root, each scrap of bark, is a victory, a small defiance against the winter that seeks to claim them all. His mind drifts to memories of better times, the harvest festival, the smell of roasting meat, the sound of music and laughter spilling from the tavern. Those days feel impossibly distant, like a story told in another language. Now the village is a place of silence and shadows, each home an island of suffering, each family bound together by the same desperate need. The man rises, his hands shaking, the sack no heavier than before. He turns back toward the village, the path barely visible in the moonlight. The wind bites at his face, stinging his eyes, but he presses on. He thinks of his children, their faces thin and pale, their eyes wide with hunger. He thinks of his wife, her hands red and raw from the cold, her voice soft and steady even as her strength fades. He thinks of the promise he made to protect them, to provide for them, to see them through the winter dot as he nears the edge of the village. Sound of the church bell reaches him again, softer now, almost a lullaby. He pauses, listening to the silence that follows, the world holding its breath. In that moment, he feels the weight of all those who have come before him, generations of men and women who have faced the same hunger, the same fear, the same unyielding. Winter, he is not alone. He is part of a story that stretches back through the centuries, a story written in the language of survival and sacrifice. He enters his home quietly, careful not to wake the children. His wife sits by the hearth, her face illuminated by the faint glow of embers. She looks up as he enters, her eyes searching his face for news, for hope, for anything that might ease the ache in her heart. He kneels beside her, emptying the sack. Onto the table, a handful of roots, a scrap of bark, a few withered berries. It is not enough, but it is something. It is hope, however small. They sit together in the darkness, their hands entwined, their bodies pressed close for warmth. The children sleep, their dreams haunted by hunger, their faces peaceful in the flickering light. The man closes his eyes, listening to the sound of their breathing, the slow, steady rhythm that is both a comfort and a reminder of all that is at stake. Outside, the wind howls, rattling the shutters and setting the signpost creaking once more. The night is long, the hunger unrelenting, but within these walls, the will to survive endures. It is woven through the silence like a thread of iron, binding them together, holding them fast against the darkness dot as the first light of dawn creeps. Across the snow, the man rises, his resolve hardening like the ground beneath his feet. He knows that the struggle is far from over, that the days ahead will be filled with the same hunger, the same fear, the same desperate hope. But for now, he allows himself a moment of peace, a moment of gratitude for the small victories that keep them alive. The world outside is still cold, still hungry, but within these walls, love endures, a fragile flame against the darkness, a testament to the power of hope and the strength of the human spirit. And as the sun rises, casting a pale gold light across the village, the story moves forward, deeper into the heart of winter, where every breath is a battle and every dawn a new beginning. The hunger remains, but so does the will to survive, carrying them onward into the next chapter of their story. A single candle flickers in the cavernous gloom of the manor's kitchen, its flame trembling as if in fear of the cold that presses against the ancient stone. Shadows stretch long across the flagstones, pooling in the corners where the servants gather, silent and watchful. The air is thick with the scent of tallow and the sour memory of spoiled grain. a reminder of how quickly abundance can rot into want. Outside, the snow falls in relentless sheets, muffling the world in a hush that feels both sacred and suffocating. The steward paces before the dwindling stores, his face gaunt, eyes hollowed by sleepless nights and the weight of impossible choices. Sacks of flour, once plump and promising, now sag with emptiness. Barrels of salted fish are scraped to the bottom, the brine clinging to the wood like a bitter aftertaste. The cook, her hands red and swollen from the cold, stirs a pot of thin gruel, the wooden spoon clattering against the iron rim. Each scrape is a small act of defiance, a refusal to let the silence win. The youngest scullion, barely more than a child, stands by the hearth, his eyes wide and hungry. He watches the cook's every movement, as if willing the gruel to thicken, to become something more than water and hope. His stomach rumbles, a sound that echoes in the vastness of the kitchen, but he says nothing. Hunger has taught him the value of silence, the danger of asking for more when there is nothing left to give. The Lord's table, once a stage for feasts and laughter, now bears only a crust of bread and a wedge of hard cheese, rationed with the precision of a miser counting coins. The great hall, where music once soared and firelight danced on polished shields, is now a cavern of echoes. The tapestries hang limp and cold, their colors faded by the breath of winter. In the corner, a dog whimpers, its ribs sharp beneath. Its matted fur, eyes fixed on the empty platters as if remembering a time when scraps fell like blessings. The servants exchange glances, their faces etched with fear and longing. Each one is haunted by the specter of famine, the memory of stories told in whispers, of winters when hunger became madness, when neighbors vanished into the snow, when the world shrank to the size of a single empty bowl. The steward's gaze lingers on the empty platters, his mind racing through calculations and prayers. How many more nights can the household endure? How many more mornings will dawn before the stores are truly bare? A gust of wind rattles the shutters, and the candle sputters, its flame shrinking as if in sympathy with the hunger that gnaws at every soul. The cook ladles out the gruel, her hand steady despite the tremor in her heart. Each bowl is passed, with a wordless blessing, a silent plea for forgiveness. The servants eat in silence, the thin broth warming their bellies but doing little to quiet the ache. The youngest scullion closes his eyes, imagining the taste of roasted meat, the sweetness of honey, the comfort of a full belly. For a moment, the memory is enough. In the great hall, the Lord sits alone, his face shadowed by the flickering light. He stares at the crust of bread before him, his mind heavy with the knowledge that his power is as fragile as the stores he guards. Outside, the snow continues to fall, erasing footprints, swallowing hope. The world is reduced to hunger and waiting, to the slow, grinding passage of time. Yet even in this darkness, there are moments of grace. The cook hums a lullaby as she stirs the pot, her voice soft and steady. The steward pauses to place a gentle hand on the scullion's shoulder, a silent promise that he will do all he can. The dog curls up by the hearth, finding warmth in the company of the living. The candle, though small, burns on as the night stretches toward dawn. The manor becomes a vessel of endurance, adrift on a sea of winter. The hunger is a shadow that lingers at the edge of every moment, a reminder of all that has been lost and all that is at stake. But within these walls, hope flickers, a fragile flame against the void, a testament to the stubbornness of the human heart. The first pale light of morning creeps across the floor, painting the stone with the promise of another day. The servants rise, their bodies stiff, their spirits weary but unbroken. The steward opens the storeroom, counting what remains, measuring out the day's rations with the care of a priest handling relics. The cook sets the pot to boil, her hands moving with the rhythm of survival. Outside, the snow begins to ease, the world holding its breath. The manor stands silent, its inhabitants bound together by hunger and hope, each one waiting for the thaw. that will bring life back to the earth. The night's ordeal lingers, a shadow that will not lift, but within it, the seeds of endurance are sown. And as the day begins, the story moves forward, deeper into the heart of winter, where every act of kindness is a rebellion, and every shared meal a victory. The hunger remains, but so does the will to survive, carrying them onward into the next chapter, where faith and desperation will be tested anew, and the thin line between hope and despair will be drawn again in the frost. A bell tolls in the frozen darkness, its sound rolling through the cloister like a summons to memory and prayer. The monastery stands alone on the edge of the world, its stone walls rimed with frost, its arches open to the wind. The night presses in, thick and unyielding, and the monks move through it in silent procession, their woolen robes heavy with ice, their breath rising in pale clouds. Each step is a ritual, each gesture a small defiance against the cold that seeps into bone and soul alike. Inside the refectory, the air is thin and sharp, filled with the faint scent of cabbage and the bitter tang of wood smoke. Bowls of thin broth are ladled out with trembling hands, the liquid steaming in the chill. The brothers eat in silence, the only sound the clatter of wooden spoons against earthenware. Hunger is a discipline here, a test of faith and flesh, endured with bowed heads and whispered psalms. The abbot, his beard rimed with ice, leads the evening prayer, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling, a plea for mercy in a season of want. The novices, young and untested, struggle to keep their eyes open, their bodies weakened by days of fasting and nights spent shivering beneath threadbare blankets. Their hands are red and swollen, their lips cracked, but they do not complain. They have been taught that suffering is a path to grace, that hunger is a teacher, that the emptiness in their bellies is a space for God to enter. Yet in the quiet moments, when the prayers have faded and the candles gutter low, doubt creeps in like a draft beneath the door. The scriptorium stands empty, quills abandoned, ink frozen in its pots, a testament to the way hunger halts even. The work of God, the illuminated manuscripts, half finished, lie beneath a thin film of dust, their gold leaf dulled by the cold. In the garden, the last withered cabbages lie beneath a crust of snow, their leaves brittle as parchment. The monks remember the taste of summer sweet apples, warm bread, honey on the tongue, but those memories are distant. Half-remembered dreams dot in the dormitory. The brothers lie close together for warmth, their bodies pressed side by side beneath rough woolen blankets. The wind keens through the cracks in the stone, carrying with it the scent of pine and the sharp, metallic tang of cold. The bell tolls for compline, its sound a hollow promise of rest. The abbot kneels in the chapel, his hands clasped in prayer, his voice a whisper in the darkness. Lord, grant us strength, grant us patience, grant us the grace to endure. Outside, the world is a vast indifferent darkness, pressing in on all sides. The stars are cold and distant, their light barely touching the earth. The snow falls in slow, silent drifts, erasing footprints, swallowing sound. The monastery is a vessel of endurance, adrift on a sea of winter, its walls holding back the void for one more night. Yet within these walls, hope flickers a candle against the darkness, a faith that endures even as the body falters. The monks rise before dawn, their prayers rising with the smoke from the hearth, their voices steady despite the hunger that gnaws at their bellies. They tend the fire, mend the walls, care for the sick and the weak. Each act is a prayer, each moment a testament to the stubbornness of the human spirit. As the first light of morning creeps across the cloister, painting the stone with the promise of another day, the brothers gather in the chapel, their voices rising in song. The sound is thin, almost fragile, but it carries through the cold, a thread of hope woven through the silence. The abbot lifts his hands in blessing, his eyes shining with tears. We endure, he whispers, we endure. The world outside remains unchanged, cold, hungry, indifferent. But within the monastery, something stirs. a sense of purpose, a flicker of grace, a belief that even in the darkest winter, the soul can find light. The hunger remains, but so does the will to survive, carrying them onward into the next chapter where the boundaries between faith and doubt, hope and despair will be tested again, and the story of endurance will be written anew in the frost. And the silence. A battered wooden door groans open, spilling a thin wedge of firelight into the snow-choked night. The tavern is a world apart from the frozen silence outside, a sanctuary of smoke, shadows, and the low murmur of voices. The rafters sag beneath the weight of old beams and new snow, and the air is thick with the mingled scents of spilled ale, wet wool, and the sharp tang of desperation. Here, hunger is not a secret, but a companion at every table. Villagers huddle close to the hearth, their faces gaunt and hollow-eyed, hands outstretched to the meager warmth. The fire crackles, sending up a shower of sparks that vanish before they reach the blackened beams above. The innkeeper, a woman with eyes like flint and hands rough as bark, moves among her guests with a battered ladle, doling out thin stew from a pot that never seems to empty, yet never quite fills. Each bowl is a negotiation, each portion a silent calculation of what can be spared and what must be saved for tomorrow. Coins are scarce, and barter is the language of survival. An old cloak, patched and threadbare, is traded for a crust of bread. A handful of dried beans changes hands for a night's shelter on the floor by the fire. In the corner, a traveling peddler counts his wares with blue, trembling fingers, buttons, needles, a single cracked mirror, his gaze wary, his hunger hidden behind a practiced smile. The tavern is a marketplace of need, where every object has a story, and every story is edged with longing. A bard sits near the hearth, his voice hoarse from the chill, his song a tapestry of lost summers and vanished feasts. He sings of fields golden with grain, of tables heavy with meat and honey, of laughter that once filled the air like bird song. The villagers listen, their eyes fixed on the flames, each one lost in memory. For a moment, the hunger recedes, replaced by the warmth of shared longing, the comfort of knowing that they are not alone in their suffering. Outside, the wind rattles the shutters, and the snow piles higher against the door, sealing them in. The world beyond the tavern is a white void, a place where hope is easily lost and easily forgotten. But within these walls, hunger becomes a common bond, a silent pact that binds stranger to neighbor, hope to despair. The fire burns low, but it burns still, a stubborn ember against the night. The innkeeper pauses by the window, her breath fogging the glass as she peers into the darkness. She remembers other winters, other nights when the tavern was full of song and plenty, when the world seemed kinder. She turns back to her guests, her face set with resolve. "Eat," she says softly, her voice carrying through the hush. "Eat. And rest, tomorrow will come." The villagers settle in, some drifting into uneasy sleep, others staring into the fire as if searching for answers in the shifting coals. The peddler wraps himself in his cloak, clutching his meager goods to his chest. The bard's song fades into silence, replaced by the soft rhythmic breathing of those who have surrendered to exhaustion. The innkeeper moves quietly among them, tucking blankets around shivering shoulders, her hands gentle despite their strength. As the night deepens, the tavern becomes a vessel of endurance, its walls holding back the winter for one more night. The hunger is not vanquished, but it is shared, and in that sharing, there is a kind of grace. The fire dwindles, the shadows grow, but hope lingers, a fragile thread woven through the darkness. Dawn is still far off, the world outside unchanged, but within the tavern, something endures. A promise, unspoken but understood, that as long as there is warmth to share, as long as there is bread to break, the night can be survived. The embers glow faintly, a reminder that even in the deepest winter, the human spirit can kindle light, and as the first gray hint of morning creeps beneath the door, The story moves forward toward new hungers, new hopes, and the unbroken chain of days that bind the living to one another, and to the world beyond the snow. A church bell tolls in the frozen dark, its sound rolling across the fields like a summons to memory and longing. In the shadow of the manor, a young girl slips from her bed, her feet bare against the icy rushes scattered across the floor. The air is sharp, each breath a small ache in her chest. She moves quietly, careful not to wake her younger brother, whose thin arms clutch at the blanket as if it might shield him from the hunger that gnaws even in sleep. The corridor is silent. Tapestries stiff with cold, their colors dulled by the breath of winter. She passes beneath the gaze of painted saints and long-dead ancestors, their eyes watching from the gloom. The manor is a world of stone and shadow, its grandeur hollowed by the season's cruelty. In the kitchen, she finds her father hunched over a ledger, the candlelight painting deep lines on his face. His fingers, stained with ink and fatigue, move slowly as he measures out the day's rations: onions, a sack of oats, a wheel of cheese grown hard as bone. Each item is precious, each decision a quiet act of desperation. She stands in the doorway watching him. He does not look up, but she knows he feels her presence. The silence between them is heavy, filled with all the words they cannot say. She wants to ask if there will be enough, if the hunger will ever end, but she bites her tongue. Instead, she crosses the room and places a gentle hand on his shoulder. He covers her hand with his own, and for a moment, the cold recedes. Outside, the world is a study in white and gray. The trees bow beneath their burden, branches etched with frost. The sky is low, heavy with the promise of more snow. Servants move like ghosts through the manor, their voices hushed, their eyes averted. In the chapel, a single candle burns before the altar, its flame a fragile defiance against the dark. The girl kneels, her prayers a mixture of gratitude and longing, her faith tested by the emptiness in her belly. She prays for her brother, for her father, for the servants who have become like family. She prays for spring, for the return of green and warmth and laughter. The hours pass slowly. The girl helps in the kitchen, her hands red and raw as she peels onions, stirs the thin porridge, sweeps the hearth. She listens to the servants' stories tales of winters past, of feasts and famine, of hope that flickers even in the darkest times. She learns the language of endurance, the quiet strength that binds the household together. As dusk falls, the family gathers in the great hall. The fire burns low, its light casting long shadows on the walls. They eat in silence, each mouthful measured, each glance a silent promise to endure. The girl watches her father, sees the worry etched deep in his brow, the way he pushes his own portion aside for her and her brother. She wants to protest, but she knows better. This is how love survives the winter quietly, stubbornly, without complaint. Night settles over the manor, heavy and still. The girl returns to her bed, curling beneath the thin blanket, her brother's breath warm against her cheek. She listens to the wind rattling the shutters, the distant howl of a wolf, the slow, steady ticking of the wooden clock in the hall. She closes her eyes and dreams of spring, of sunlight on her face, of bread warm from the oven, of laughter echoing through the open windows. But morning is still far away. The hunger remains, a shadow that lingers at the edge of every moment. Yet within the manor, hope endures, a fragile thread woven through the silence, a promise that the world will one day be green again. As the first pale light of dawn creeps across the land, the girl rises, her heart heavy but unbroken. She wraps her brother in the blanket, tucks him close, and moves to the window. The world outside is unchanged, cold, silent, waiting. But within these walls, the seeds of endurance are sown, and the story moves forward, deeper into the heart of winter, where every act of kindness is a rebellion, and every shared meal a victory. The bell tolls again, calling the household to another day. The girl bows her head, whispers a prayer for strength, and steps into the cold, ready to face whatever the day may bring. The hunger is still there, but so is hope, carrying them onward into the next chapter where the thaw will come, and the world will awaken once more. A raven circles above the snowbound village, its cry slicing through the stillness like a warning. Below, the world is locked in winter's grip roofs, sag beneath the weight of ice, and the river runs slow and black beneath its frozen skin. In a cottage at the edge of the woods, an old man sits by the hearth, his hands wrapped around a cup of weak broth. The fire is little more than a memory, its embers glowing faintly in the gloom, casting long shadows that flicker and fade across the rough-hewn walls. He listens to the silence, broken only by the ticking of a wooden clock and the distant creak of branches in the wind. Each sound is magnified in the hush, each moment stretched thin by hunger and waiting. On the table, a loaf of bread as hard as stone sits beneath a linen cloth, a relic of better days. The old man's fingers trace the edge of the cloth, remembering the warmth of feasts long past, the laughter of children, the music of voices raised in song. Now the cottage is a place of memory and longing, the present narrowed to the ache in his belly and the hope that his grandson will return. The boy has gone into the forest, searching for anything edible, roots, bark, a stray rabbit. The old man's heart beats with worry, each moment of absence a tightening knot. He fingers a rosary, the beads smooth and cool, each prayer a plea for the boy's safe return. He remembers the stories his own father told him, of winters when the snow never seemed to end, when hunger drove men to desperate acts. He wonders if the boy is cold, if he is afraid, if he has found anything to bring home. Outside, the snow falls thicker, erasing footprints, swallowing hope. The raven lands on the roof, its wings beating a rhythm of warning. The old man raises, his joints stiff, and moves to the window. He peers into the white void, searching for any sign of movement, any shadow that might be the boy. The world is silent, the village huddled beneath its blanket of snow, each home a small island of endurance. He returns to the hearth, adding a splinter of wood to the dying fire. The flames leap up for a moment, casting a golden glow on the walls, illuminating the old man's face lined and weathered, but still strong. He remembers the promise he made to the boy's mother, gone these many years, to keep the child safe, to see him through the winter, to teach him the old ways of survival. The promise is a chain, binding him to the world, giving him purpose even as the hunger gnaws at his resolve. The hours pass slowly. The old man dozes in his chair, dreams flickering behind his closed eyes, dreams of green fields, of sunlight on water, of bread warm from the oven. He wakes with a start, the fire nearly out, the room colder than before. He listens, heart pounding, for the sound of footsteps in the snow. At last, the door creaks open, and the boy enters, cheeks flushed with cold, arms full of kindling and a handful of frozen roots. Relief floods the old man's chest, mingled with pride and sorrow. The boy kneels by the hearth, feeding the fire, his hands quick and sure. Together, they prepare a thin meal, sharing the roots and the last of the broth, their silence filled with gratitude and love. The raven calls again, its voice echoing through the night. The old man looks at the boy, sees the hunger in his eyes, the hope that has not yet been extinguished. He places a hand on the boy's shoulder, a gesture of comfort and promise. "We endure," he whispers, the words a benediction, a vow. As the night deepens, the old man's vigil becomes a ritual of faith and memory, a testament to the endurance of love in the face of winter's cruelty. The fire burns low, the shadows grow long, but within the cottage, hope lingers, a fragile flame against the darkness, a reminder that even in the deepest winter, the human spirit can kindle light. The world outside remains unchanged, cold, silent, indifferent. But within these walls, something endures. The hunger is not vanquished, but it is shared, and in that sharing, there is a kind of grace. The old man closes his eyes, the boy's head resting on his knee, and together they wait for the dawn, a new day, a new chapter, and the unbroken chain of hope that binds the living to one another, and to the world beyond the snow. The night yields, at last, to a thin, uncertain dawn. Pale light seeps through the cracks in the shutters, painting the cottage walls with the faintest promise of gold. The old man stirs in his chair, the boy's head still heavy on his knee, both of them wrapped in the silence that lingers after a night of hunger and hope. The fire has burned down to a bed of ash, its warmth a memory that clings to the air, like a blessing. Outside, the world is hushed, the snow lying deep and undisturbed. The ravens cry now, only a memory echoing in the mind. The boy wakes, blinking against the cold, and rises to tend the fire. His hands move with the careful patience of one who has learned that every ember matters, that every scrap of warmth is a victory. The old man watches him, pride and sorrow mingling in his chest. He remembers his own father's hands, rough and steady, teaching him to coax flame from the stubborn wood, to find hope in the smallest things. The boy's face is thin, his eyes too old for his years, but there is a quiet strength in the way he moves, a determination that will not be broken. By hunger or cold, they share the last of the bread, softened in the broth, each bite a sacrament. The old man chews slowly, savoring the taste, the memory of feasts long past flickering at the edge of his mind. The boy eats in silence, his gaze fixed on the window, watching the world awaken. The snow glows in the morning light, untouched and perfect, a blank page waiting for the story of survival to be written anew. The old man rises, joints aching, and wraps himself in his cloak. He moves to the door, pausing to rest his hand on the boy's shoulder. "Stay inside," he murmurs, his voice rough with worry and love. "Keep the fire burning." The boy nods, understanding the unspoken fear that lingers in the old man's eyes. The world beyond the door is beautiful and deadly, a place where hope and danger walk hand in hand. The old man steps into the snow, the cold biting at his face, the air sharp and clean. He moves slowly, each step a test of will, his breath rising in clouds that vanish into the pale sky. The village is quiet, the houses huddled together like sheep against the wind. Smoke rises from a few chimneys, thin and uncertain, a sign that life endures, even in the heart of winter. He makes his way to the well, the bucket frozen to the rope, the water beneath a skin of ice. He chips away at the frost, his hands numb, his mind drifting to memories of summers when the well was a place of laughter and gossip, when the world was green and full of promise. Now it is a place of necessity, a reminder that survival is built on small daily acts of courage. As he returns to the cottage, he sees the boy at the window, watching, waiting. The old man lifts a hand in greeting, a silent reassurance that he is still here, that they are still together. Inside, the boy has kept the fire alive, the room filled with the scent of smoke and hope. They sit together, sharing the warmth, the silence between them filled with all the things they cannot say. The day passes slowly, the light shifting across the floor, the shadows growing long. The old man tells stories of winters past, of heroes and saints, of the time when the world was young and hunger was only a word. The boy listens, his eyes bright, his imagination kindled by the tales. For a moment, the hunger is forgotten, replaced by the magic of words and the comfort of shared memory. As evening falls, the wind rises, rattling the shutters, whispering of storms to come. The old man kneels by the hearth, adding the last of the wood to the fire. He prays, not for abundance, but for endurance, for the strength to see another dawn, for the courage to face another night. The boy joins him, their voices mingling in the darkness, a song of hope and defiance. The world outside is unchanged, cold, silent, indifferent, but within the cottage, something endures. The hunger is still there, a shadow at the edge of every moment, but it is met with love, with memory, with the stubborn will to survive. The old man and the boy sit together, watching the fire, waiting for the night to pass. And as the darkness deepens, the story moves forward, toward the promise of spring, toward the hope that lies beyond the snow, toward the next chapter in the long, unbroken chain of endurance that binds the living to one another, and to the world that waits, silent and patient, for the return of the sun. Night falls again, heavy and absolute, pressing against the cottage walls with the weight of 1,000 silent fears. The wind prowls the eaves, searching for a way in, and the snow outside glows blue in the moonlight, untouched and endless. Inside, the old man and the boy sit close by the fire, their shadows dancing on the walls, their faces lit by the uncertain flicker of flame. The hunger is quieter now, dulled by exhaustion and the thin meal they shared, but it lingers, a constant ache, a reminder of all that has been lost and all that must be endured. The boy's eyes are wide and restless, reflecting the firelight and the questions he cannot voice. He glances at the old man, searching for reassurance, for some sign that the world will one day be warm and full again. The old man senses the boy's unease and begins to speak, his voice low and steady, weaving a story from the threads of memory and hope. He tells of a time before the great snows, when the fields were green and the river ran swift and clear. He speaks of harvests so bountiful that the barns groaned beneath their weight, of festivals where the whole village danced beneath garlands of flowers, of tables heavy with bread and cheese and honey. The boy listens, his hunger forgotten for a moment, his mind painting pictures of a world he has never known. But the old man does not shy from the truth. He speaks, too, of the years when the rains failed, when the earth cracked and the wells ran dry, when hunger stalked the land like a wolf. He tells of neighbors lost to the cold, of families driven apart by want, of the long, silent nights when hope seemed as distant as the summer sun. Yet always, he says, there was something that endured, a stubborn spark, a refusal to surrender, a love that held fast even as the world grew dark. The boy leans against the old man's side, comforted by the rhythm of his words, the warmth of his presence. The fire burns low, the room growing colder, but within the circle of their shared story, there's a kind of peace. The old man's voice falters, and for a moment, the only sound is the crackle of the last embers and the sigh of the wind at the door. Outside, the snow continues to fall, soft and relentless, erasing the tracks of the day, burying the world in silence. The village sleeps, each home a small island of endurance, each family bound together by the same thread of hope and fear. Somewhere in the darkness, a wolf howls, its cry rising and falling like a prayer. The old man rises, his movements slow and careful, and places another log on the fire. The flames leap up, casting new shadows, painting the boy's face with gold. The old man looks at him, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "We are not alone," he says softly. "Others have walked this path before us. Others will walk it after. We endure, not just for ourselves, but for all who came before, and all who will come after." The boy nods, understanding more than words can say. He wraps himself in his blanket, drawing close to the fire, and closes his eyes. The old man sits beside him, keeping watch as the night deepens, his thoughts drifting between memory and prayer. In the darkness, the fire becomes a beacon, a promise that the night will not last forever, that the world will turn, that spring will come. The hunger is still there, a shadow at the edge of every dream, but it is met with love, with memory, with the quiet courage that has carried them through so many nights. As the first hint of dawn touches the sky, pale and uncertain, the old man feels a stirring of hope. He knows that the hardest days may still lie ahead, that the snow may fall for weeks yet, that the hunger may grow sharper before it fades. But he also knows that they will endure, that the story of survival is written not in grand gestures, but in the small daily acts of care and courage. The boy stirs, waking to the faint light, and the old man smiles, his heart full of gratitude and sorrow and love. Together, they rise to greet the day, to face whatever comes, to carry the story forward, one breath, one step, one fragile hope at a time. And as the sun climbs slowly above the horizon, casting long shadows across the snow, the world seems, for a moment, to hold its breath. The hunger remains, but so does the will to survive, and the story moves onward toward the promise of spring, toward the thaw that will awaken the earth, toward the next chapter in the long, unbroken chain of endurance and hope